Joining us as he will throughout the course of the offseason, NFL insider for, of course, NFL.com, NFL Network, Mike Garafolo, who we chatted with last week at the Super Bowl. Fast forward to now, there's been a flurry, Mike, of Cardinal-related coaching news. A shocker, Nick Rallis returns. He's been kind of held captive by the team since JG's firing. They've interviewed other people. How did this all come about, in your opinion?
Held captive is a little strong, I'd say. I've seen it. I'm trying to remember a similar one this year where guys weren't allowed to interview elsewhere, and not necessarily a bad thing. It's just it sucks when you're blocked for other jobs, and then you don't get the job at the place that you were. So. And I know Jonathan Gannon was always a fan of Nick Rallis, always a fan. Just thought he was tremendously gifted as a coach. And he was not the only one in the building that felt that way. And clearly had supporters upstairs. There were conversations. So I know that the folks that were already there, and Monty Ossenfort being one of them, champions of Nick Rallis, and conversations are happening. Mike LaFleur's coming in, doesn't really know everybody, right? Has a general sense of, having been coaching for a team that's played against the Arizona Cardinals the last couple of years. So in the end, I think it was probably a wise choice, to stick with a guy that was so highly thought of in the building, have at least a little bit of continuity here as you start with this new coaching staff. So, it's if he had been held this time and then, oh, by the way, you're not our DC, a little bit of a different ending, I suppose. But in the end, when teams have those contracts that extend beyond the current season, they're like, well, we're paying it. We have it under cut. That's the reason for the contract. It's a lot of times why I'll give you one. Matt Nagy decided not to sign his contract with the Kansas City Chiefs this past season before the year, saying, I'm going to bet on myself this offseason. Worst comes to worst, I could potentially still come back to Kansas City, but wasn't the primary play caller. So it was like head coach, then play calling offensive coordinator unquestioned somewhere, and then return to Kansas City, winds up getting the job with the Giants. So sometimes it's tough for a coach to make that call. The alternative is being kept from interviewing for lateral moves elsewhere. In the end, it worked out for Nick Rallis.
Does just the ability or the value of being one of 32, getting to be a DC at 32 years old, like Nick Rallis is so young, and we agree with you. I mean, this guy was a rising star up until about the final 2 months of the season, and then he fell out of favor, of course, with the fan base with lopsided performances from the Cardinals, and it led to Gannon's firing. But, you report Charlie Bolin, the interim DC there, and the Giants, he interviewed for this position. Aubrey Pleasant. We had Carl Scott. He interviewed it from the Seahawks.
Yeah.
Martindale was tied to this job. We mentioned Bradley. Like, what can we say, or what can we kind of speculate as far as where the footing is between all parties involved here, where Nick's still in the building, guys are interviewing to be his replacement, and then the Cardinals, there's Albert Breer saying that the job was offered to Gus Bradley. Like, how do they come together? How do they recontract to move forward?
At this point, you just coach your best football, and you hope for your best football. Yes, I have your printout. Hold on. This is like we're printing out labels for returns and stuff like that. Yeah, all good. No problem. You have any thoughts on the Cardinals coaching staff? Nothing. All right. Good luck with your return. I got to find another place for the printer. My office doesn't seem to work. What was the question? Oh, Gus Bradley. Yeah. And that's a non-play calling job that he wound up taking.
Right.
I don't understand. And I have not talked to Gus about that. I don't know. Because Robert Saleh made it clear he wants to call play. So I don't know about that. And I don't know that it was necessarily like this huge fallback that like they got turned down by so many people, because look, your restart. I thought it was one that a lot of folks were interested. I know Charlie Bolin was. I don't know exactly when he pulled out versus when they decided to go with Nick or vice versa. But I know that there was interest in that because, listen, it's a great place to live, number one. You don't get a lot of that. I've had a lot of like, oh, am I going to go live in Buffalo or Cleveland or all these other places? So that's number one. Number two, there's going to be runway here. There was a lot of coordinator spots. She's printing out another label. there are a lot of coordinator spots that were going to be with head coaches that were potentially on the hot seat. And so a lot of folks were steering clear of those. So I don't know. I don't have the final answer on that on Gus Bradley, but for Rallis, best possible outcome for him.
Real quick, last question. It's very bizarre that Mike's brother, Matt, now employs Jonathan Gannon.
Yeah.
And Jonathan Gannon's an advocate for Nick. Can we draw the conclusion that, Matt likely recommended Nathaniel Hackett for the OC job? Is there a possibility that Matt and Jonathan Gannon told Mike LaFleur, like, you ought to keep Nick Rallis on the staff?
Yeah, it was no question in my mind that was at least relayed from Jonathan to Matt to Mike that way. And
right.
I saw Matt was at the press conference. He certainly loves his brother. Those two are tight. And, there's certainly communication between the two. I mean, there's communication between coaching staffs more than we probably realize. Like, not when they're playing one another, or certainly in that competitive nature. It's also why John Harbaugh, one of the reasons he wanted to be in the NFC was to not face his brother nearly as much, and to be able, because those guys communicate all the time too as well. So I have no doubt that communication, at least through the way that we talked about, if not directly between Gannon and Mike LaFleur, he loves Rallis. He thinks he's always been on point. Offensively, the Cardinals haven't been where they needed to be the last couple of years. And when you talk about the performances down the stretch, it just felt like a team that was leaking oil for a lot of reasons, right? And I'm sure that was relayed as well from Gannon to Mike LaFleur in this case.
Let's end this conversation with this, because Jonathan Gannon certainly had full autonomy as far as his coaching staff. A lot of people want to jump to the conclusion that LaFleur was saddled with Rallis. You get the sense that Mike LaFleur has the same full autonomy as far as building his first staff here in the desert?
Yes, I do. Now, in collaboration with Monty and with the front office and all the other folks that had some input, I believe it was collaboration. I don't sense that there was anything forced on him at this point by any stretch. I have not heard that to that regard. So Carl Scott, you guys were asking about him. Ian and I were talking about this earlier. Staying in Seattle. Okay, we thought he was potentially going to Vegas. I had heard a little bit of that. So it sounds like he's staying in Seattle after Rallis gets the defensive coordinator job. So there you go. Could have been another one that's like, oh, you know what? I didn't get that job in Arizona. I think there were guys that were in the mix. I don't think everybody pulled out or turned them down. So there you got a guy staying in Seattle there.
All right, so we're going to ask you a question. We're going to ask you for the next month until it inevitably goes down. What's your opinion on the Kyler Murray saga? Because it feels like with each passing day, I think there's momentum for him to be cut based on the cap gymnastics. I would love for the team. Listen, I would love for them to keep Kyler Murray. It doesn't seem like they're going to do that. I mean,
Sell me on it.
I didn't think they were going to keep Nick Rallis, and they did. So maybe there's a reality in which they would do it. I guess this is a two-parter, Mike, and I'm not phrasing it particularly well, but they have to have a plan at quarterback if you're cutting Kyler Murray, right?
Your plan is going to be a cluster of guys. Your plan is potentially that cluster, including a guy you're going to draft highly, potentially. You say, okay, we're comfortable with one of these. You don't make this move and say, we've got one guy in mind. It's not going to work that way. So you've got to have these decisions made with, okay, if we get any one of these 4 or 5, we're comfortable with it. That's how it's done to make a move like this, to make a decision like this, I should say. So, there'll be communication at the combine. We are right up against it. We got a week and a half before we're in Indianapolis, less than a week and a half before we're in Indianapolis. And that's when things start to crystallize a little bit as far as who's going to be available, who you could potentially land. It's going to suck financially if they decide to make that decision, but it's the lesser suck of, well, if it's another year of paying him all this, and then we're going to owe him more on top of that in 2027, that's going to be doubly painful. It's why the Broncos a couple of years ago decided, we're going to eat whatever we had to eat on Russell Wilson to avoid the next year triggering. It's a similar situation. It's a good contract structure. It gives the player a lot of power and a lot of options. So good on Kyler Murray and his camp for getting that structure the way that they did. But you've got to cut bait at this point. I just don't see why you'd think all of a sudden things are going to turn for him in Arizona. Feels like he needs a fresh start as well.
It does certainly feel like all parties involved. But as far as just the perception of it when people see this quarterback market and how it really hasn't materialized. There's not a ton of options. There rarely is, but this more so than any. It's a one quarterback draft. It feels like people don't understand where it's like it's not a case of Kyler Murray is your best option. Like you're talking about, they need to get in front of this to where the 2027 guarantees don't kick in, and the Cardinals can move forward starting this offseason so they're not saddled with future investments in Kyler Murray. It's not Kyler versus everybody else. It's the Cardinals' decision to take this leap of faith at the quarterback position post Kyler Murray.
Yeah, I also just it has been a one quarterback draft for a lot of folks in their minds. I think there's going to be two in the first round, potentially highly. You could see Ty Simpson go early. For him to come out the way that he did and turn down another year at Bama, I am of the belief that he felt confident that enough teams were going to have interest in him that he'd go first round to make that jump to the NFL. So I don't know what that does for you. I know there are a lot of folks who are big Simpson guys and some who think that he still needs some further refinement and maybe he's not big enough. But that's the conversation we're going to have for the draft leading up here. So there's some teams are going to be happy with what they wind up with from a quarterback standpoint. Somebody's going to take Malik Willis, and that's a boomer bust in my mind, because a lot of times with these backup quarterbacks, when you see just a little bit, it's like, oh, well, that could be the sample of the greater whole. And then the guy goes somewhere and it's not that, because of a variety of reasons, whether it's he leaves a coaching staff that was coaching him up really well, a situation with a lot of great weapons and players around him, and potentially just was playing well for those short periods of time and fooled you into thinking that he was great. I mean, Matt Flynn with the Packers years ago, saw just a little bit. He winds up with a great contract and didn't wind up even starting for the Seahawks right away. So I think some teams are going to be happy with what they wind up. Kirk Cousins is an option for some teams out there. I thought he played good football down the stretch. I don't think you're turning it over to Kirk Cousins and saying we've got the next quarterback for the next 3 years, but he could get you some wins and buy you some time, certainly as a coaching staff potentially starting out. So let's see what those talks at the combine bring here for the Cardinals in the quarterback market.
Do you expect them to be in the Malik Willis, I guess, sweepstakes because of the relationship with Mike and Matt and the connection there? I know a lot of people, rightfully so, connect Malik with the Dolphins, but I just look at that infrastructure there. You got a defensive head coach, you've got offensive unfamiliarity. Like, I mean, if the Cardinals wanted to pursue Malik Willis, would they have a good chance at signing him?
You make a great point, because the connections are more on the offensive side for the Cardinals. That's a great point. And I've thought about that. It's like, okay, great. The defensive coordinator who ran a show team in front of Malik, like what, now I'm sure he saw some habits inside of the building. And certainly when he did play, he was probably impressed, but that doesn't make it an automatic for me. Whereas, and we just talked about what kind of word could Gannon have put out toward Mike LaFleur for Rallis, could potentially have the same thing from Matt LaFleur in that regard. So he wants his brother to succeed. I'm sure he'll tell him the honest truth on Malik Willis. So you're right. I mean, that's a potential one. I think he's somewhere in the structure could be interesting, but somewhere in the $20-something million range. Right. I think that's a fair number for Malik Willis. It used to be the top of the market. Now it's not even halfway to the top of the market.
Right.
And then potentially some things that you can earn along the way to get yourself some bigger money. He'll probably want something in the 30s, just saying, hey, here's my strength that I'm negotiating from. I think it's a little too rich for some folks' blood. So it's not unreasonable to think you could cut Kyler Murray and still pay that kind of money toward Malik Willis. Certainly reasonable. So let's see how it goes.
Yeah, you mentioned it there, and just to ultimately clarify to Cardinals fans out there, like, cut Kyler Murray. Do you feel like that's probably more so than a trade option?
I mean, it depends on what they're willing to eat.
Yeah.
It depends, I think, on how, not desperate, but if this shuffle starts to happen, because there's more openings. This is the one thing that people, when I'm talking to them about how this is going to go, there's more openings than reasonable bodies to fill these openings, right? And especially when you factor in potentially, if Tua's getting cut, is he really considered a starting quarterback by most of the league? I don't know that he is, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And he could have to go somewhere where he's either competing or serving as a backup to sort of rebuild himself, because some of these options for some of these guys are going to be like, well, yeah, there's a chair over there. But do I really want to go there? I mean, Minnesota seems to be the one that's a lot of folks would love to get to. That's like Kirk Cousins in my mind would want to go there if he's not in Atlanta. I don't rule out Atlanta for him, by the way. If Derek Carr returns, Minnesota is going to be on his short list because I know that there's been previously some interest in him there. Is Derek Carr going to Arizona for something that's on the startup in a division where that's the heart? I mean, that of all the things I've heard, like that's the thing that's been the toughest selling point for the Cardinals is we may have to start over with a new quarterback, maybe a little bit of short-term pain for a long-term game at a lot of positions. And we're going up against teams that are in the Super Bowl, competing for the Super Bowl, making the playoffs. Like it's a really tough sell in that division right now. So it's just going to have to be an understanding of it's not going to be immediate success, but do it the right way. You set yourself up for long-term success.
A couple rapid fire here before we get you out of here, Mike. Breece Hall, franchise tag, free agent. What do you expect there? I know he flourished under Mike LaFleur and the Cardinals need a running back.
Now, to not trade him at the trading deadline, in my mind, made me think franchise tag.
Okay.
I've heard some mixed perceptions of that as we get closer here. So I'm on the fence on that one with Breece Hall. If he gets, I'll tell you this, if he gets franchised, he's not going to be happy. Not going to be happy. And then maybe it's a tag and trade type situation. We'll see.
What about Mac Jones? Inevitably probably gets dealt, especially when you consider they lack a surplus at quarterback.
No sure thing. No sure thing. I mean, it's going to have to be value for the 49ers to make that move. And it's, whether it's like we talked about with Kyler, it depends on if guys don't get their guys. Okay, can we get more aggressive for Mac Jones? So I'll go greater than 50% on Mac Jones, but I can't get to 100 yet.
And lastly, how about this NFLPA grades? Cardinals' new facility opens up in 2028, but that's a long way away and a lot of bad report cards coming their way. Good thing for the Cardinals that this is kind of going either towards reform or gone as we know it.
The facility itself or the
public shaming, basically.
It's still, I mean, it could still be a private communication thing, right? Yeah. I mean, their biggest thing is that it was not for public consumption. So, and that really puts the pressure on it. And I think in a lot of cases led to some good. So the NFLPA has got to figure out a way to do that in a more constructive, private manner. They've got a lot of things they're going to be talking about coming up here, whether it's the 18th game or the potential to restart CBA negotiations here in the coming years. So I would add that to the list and make sure that, because there's some facilities that are just like the Washington facility is, what are we doing? And I know that they were talking about building a new one there too as well. Houston's now building a new one. So that's important. You spend more time at the facility than you do at the stadium. Like that should be your number one priority. But a lot of times it's for the fan experience and making money. Shocker.
Yeah. I think you need to change out the toner, Mike. I think you got maybe a warning code there.
Kids usually kill me on that because they want the full color printouts, and it's like these cartridges. I don't understand how these cartridges, like they're out of ink like that. And you gotta go buy a new one for like $90 too.
Right. It's the cost of an offensive lineman in free agency.
Yeah, I saw Shaq a couple of years ago was advertising a never run out of ink or more ink or whatever, something like that. I gotta talk to Shaq about that.
What doesn't he advertise for though?
Exactly. Honestly, here's the other surprise. I thought we were out of paper. I don't know where this paper came from. So, because my kids take the paper too, and yesterday I was going to go print out. So I got stuff to print out now. I'm going to wind up doing it.
He's a wealth of information and insight as far as the NFL goes. Make sure you're following along on social media. You're watching his work. The Insiders.
Yeah.
Best friends, Tom Pelissaro, Ian Rappaport, and crew.
Best friends.
That's right. And you can see him with Cuz, of course, on our All City friends at PHLY. Mike Garafolo, thanks so much.
We're all in the family. Thank you, boys. See you in the Indy in a couple of weeks here.
Sounds good.